So come out in the bee yard. I hear these swarming bees everywhere. And wouldn't you know it, even though we expanded the bees, we put the boxes on their hives, we gave them all this extra room. It's the first day of September. They swarm out on me anyway. But here's the good news. I have a box ready to go. I have a swarm box ready to go. It's ready. Good sized swarm. So we're gonna hive them up. It's late in the year. Gonna have to feed them. But it's the beginning of a big nectar flow, so I think that's good. Probably give them a half an hour to settle down. And once they've settled and the cluster's kind of tightened up, they're bivouacking here. That's when we'll go ahead and spray them with some sugar syrup and then put them in a box, as I said, that's ready to go. So now what do? Now that we have these bees in the tree, we're going to give them some time to collect themselves so that we can catch them from the tree and then put them in a beehive, and I'm going to walk you through every step of that. Nice slow motion sequence so you can see how they are still gathering here with the old queen. This is the queen that departed one of the colonies in my apiary. There are several blue spruce trees. This is one that they have not often used. This is over by the hazelnut trees. Fantastic year this year. And I'm just showing you examples. Look at their extended abdomens that the light is passing through, because they've all loaded up on honey before they departed that hive. Some of them even have pollen on their legs. They're ready to establish themselves, and there are a lot of bees here. Late season swarms are often ignored or just let fly by most beekeepers. But last year, we collected 5 swarms in September, hived them all, and they made it through winter. So I'm going to set this collection up just the same way I did last year with pre-drawn synthetic comb, and we're going to see how these do. The good news is they're only about 7 feet up. Now you might be wondering, what kind of bees are these anyway? Well, they're Saskatraz bees. They were established actually in spring from a package of bees this year. Now when we're going to set them up, I just happen to have a space here, and I've put a 2x4 square shim here to get this hive up and out of reach of skunks, which I have quite a few of here in my backyard apiary. So we're going to put a 10 frame solid bottom board on with a slatted rack, and then the clamps are going to a deep box with 10 frames in it. Now this is my mobile box, that's why it has the clamps on it. Normally we take this out, collect a swarm, and bring it home, but in this case we're going to install it right here. I'm going to pull out some of these acorn frames. There are also some foundationless frames in this box. I don't want to do that this time of year. There's a twig in here that had a previous small swarm on it. Normally I transport in this box and then transfer the bees to another hive in my apiary, or if I collect them far afield, I'll take them to a friend's house who wants to get started with bees. Now that's hexacomb. Not hexacomb, sorry. Hexacell is what it's originally called. It's sold in the United States under the trade name of BetterComb, and that is sold by Better Bee. Here's one of those that has been used before, but it's only held in with toothpicks. I'm going to give you a close-up look at that here pretty soon. But I've stopped supporting that comb with toothpicks. It's just not rigid enough. See the toothpicks on the sides here? They run across the top and across the bottom. And this is the slatted rack, which is going to give me lots of extra space for the bees when I dump them in here. And I'm going to get these foundationless frames out. The black frames are heavy waxed acorn frames. Now I've got some freshly mounted BetterComb deep frames here. These are going to give the bees a place to put their resources immediately and for the queen to start laying immediately. And you'll notice too that all of these new frames I have are wired. Again, don't go with just the toothpicks anymore, even for the brood box. Get a super hot day, that stuff can slump or stretch or deform, and by wiring them up, they're going to hold their own just fine. I also have an old propolis covered, waxed up inner cover, and this is going to help the bees feel like, wow, this place has been occupied before. I think we're going to stay here. I also have a polystyrene cover here. That's an R6.5. Going to leave that on right through winter. Because again, this is September. These bees need to survive through winter. So now I have to get up here and get them off of this branch. What do you think I'm going to use? That's right. I'm going to use my butterfly net. It's a nice telescoping aluminum framed butterfly net, but what I'm doing first is I'm going to spray them down with sugar syrup. 1:1 sugar to water. Happens to be 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 30 degrees Celsius. Storms are coming in. So I would not spray them down with sugar water like this if it were a cold day. But being that it's nice and hot, they actually don't mind. Keep in mind they've only been out of the hive that they just left for about an hour now. I also use Honeybee Healthy as part of the mix here. And when I spray the outsides, the queen will actually move to the center. If she's anywhere near the surface, when you spray with a Honeybee Healthy, she'll avoid it. So that's good for me, because when I shake them off of this branch, I want the queen to go with them. I don't want her left clinging to the branch, and then I would have to come back and collect her later. So we're going to try to get them all here with this butterfly net. It's all aluminum. I'll give you a link to this. Everybody wants to know where I get them. And you can sew a pillowcase on or anything you want. This works really well, and I don't have to clip branches. Some really good shakes in there. Remember, we sprayed them with sugar syrup, so it added some weight. They fall as a cluster. I'm wearing that natural apiary camouflaged vented suit for this. Now the bees are just zinging everywhere, and I'm just going to walk them right over to the hive I want to put them in. So here we go. I'm carrying the camera on the tripod. Could be a little jerky here. I'm going to get you all set up so that you can see everything every step of the way. Nice heavy cluster of bees there. So we hope the queen is in there, but we're going to find that out soon enough just by the behavior of the bees. So we just dump them in there. Now normally we'd have to wait until they move down or out of the way or get on the frames, but because we have a slatted rack down below, that creates extra space and the bees will go down there. And we're going to give them some more spritzes of 1:1 sugar syrup to help keep them grounded here while we get things organized. The 10 frame slatted rack. Now we're going to put in that BetterComb, and it's very lightweight. So what I do is I set it on, and if you watch it, it gradually settles down as the bees move out of the way. Plastic frames to the outside, pre-drawn synthetic BetterComb towards the middle. You can see that these acorn frames had a colony start to draw the wax. And see how it gradually settles down after you set it on the bees? Watch this frame, it just settles nice and slow onto those rabbits. And again, the synthetic comb acts exactly like beeswax. The bees use it exactly the same, and they will go straight to work provisioning these pre-drawn cells. Here's one that's been used before. We'll put that to the outside there. Just being very careful not to smash any bees. I'm not in any rush all the time in the world. There is a rainstorm coming in, so we definitely want to hive them up. I was kind of surprised that a swarm emitted with the sky and the weather conditions being what they are. These are generally pretty good indicators of weather changing. I'm going to get my hive tool here. So I have 5 frames, deep frames with BetterComb, and 5 acorn heavy wax frames. Now some people might say that's a lot of bees, Fred. Why don't you go ahead and put 2 boxes on there? Well, I like to start with 1. And then we're going to let the bees start to work these deep frames. And once they get committed down there and they get their brood going, that's when I'll come back and add a medium super. If I put a medium super on right now, chances are the entire swarm will just move into the upper box, and because it's late in the year, they would not establish their brood down in the bottom box as they would in spring. So we're going to keep them in this box, let them make a commitment there. I'll inspect them in about a week. Then I'll add that medium super on again with some medium BetterComb. This is where we get to the edge. That's the guillotine area there where you could chop a bunch of bees if you're not careful. So I just slide it slowly across and let the bees get out of the way there. A couple of things. I don't want to chop any bees in half. The other thing is, when I put the lid on, I don't want to hear that crunchy sound of bees being smashed. And keep in mind, this is a well-used inner cover. That's lots of propolis on there. Good for the bees. They're going to know that bees have lived there before, and it's going to help them accept it. Then I just put the net out in front and let the bees that are still in the bag, quite a lot of them still in that bag, we're going to let them get the queen's pheromone, and they're going to follow the bag up the fabric and go right in through that entrance. It is important to have it have physical contact with the hive where the queen is. I've found that if you just lay that net on the ground in front of the hive, they don't move quite as fast. But if they have direct contact with the bees on the landing board, they all spread their pheromone across, and the bees quickly follow that pheromone right into the box, of course assuming that the queen is in the box. But based on their early behavior here, seeing them walk up the fabric and head towards that entrance, I'm thinking the queen's there. And we're going to see a Nasonov gland here on lots of these bees, spreading that queen pheromone into the air and telling the others that they've arrived and this is where we're staying. Sure enough, they're walking up the fabric, going right into that entrance. Now this is a newly hived swarm, so we don't want a large entrance. They're vented with aluminum screen there, but the physical entrance is only about 3 inches wide. Very easy for them to defend. They're going to have to get into 5th gear here and start collecting lots of resources right away if they want to guarantee their survival. Now remember, we've got a queen that is not even a year old, by the way. These are Saskatraz bees. She is a strong layer, and as soon as they start to bring in enough resources, including the pollen, that queen is going to start laying in those cells. Now the only comb that they have to draw out will be on the acorn frames that are heavy waxed. So as they work up the BetterComb that's in the middle, 5 frames there, They will then move on and start to draw out wax and make their own comb on the acorn frames. Here they are now. If you look at the abdomens of the bees on the right, you'll see that light colored patch at the very tip of the abdomen, and that is the Nasonov gland. It's called that because of a famous anatomist that discovered that, and that is how they spread the queen's pheromone. Bottom center, you see it very clearly. Another one holding her abdomen high in the air to make sure that pheromone goes out, so any flyby bees that are looking for this swarm will now be able to find their way to this hive. Now you also may be wondering, what about the bees that didn't make it into the bag, that didn't get carried to the hive? What happens to them? Well, I'm going to show you that. It's also how we're going to figure out which hive this swarm came from. Looks like they're really jammed in here, but that's a lot of bees that are coming from the air, of course, landing and going in, and then the others that are climbing up the fabric, and they have decided this is the place to live. Look at the condition of their wings, and you'll see which of them are old foragers, and the rest are young and healthy and fresh. And there's a mixed bag of bees here. And look at the weather. We've got rain coming in. We're looking to the south. And I was actually surprised with it being overcast with the type of unstable clouds we see here that they decided to swarm out, but they did, so we're dealing with it. Once again, now look at all the workers here that have their abdomens extended with the Nasonov gland exposed, that very light color right at the first segment, at the tip of their abdomens. They're all doing it, spreading a really strong pheromone into the air, and sure enough, hundreds of bees came and joined in, aside from those climbing up from down below. So even though we had about 5 pounds in the bag, quite a few more still airborne. Now we go back to the branch that they were collected from. Look what's going on here. Now you might be tempted to go and bag those bees too. But you know what? By their behavior here, we can tell there is no queen present. They're very unsettled. They're climbing all over each other. They're looking for the queen. Her pheromone is not strong. And the bees that are clinging to the tree branch just have to hold on until the bees that are on top of them fly off, and then they'll fly off also. Now what happens if they can't find their way to the colony that we installed the swarm in? Well, this is what happens. They return to the hive that they departed from. Look at all the Nasonov glands here. They are reclaiming the bees that departed with the swarm that could not find the new location. They've lost their queen, so what do? They go right back home, and this tells me that this is the hive that the swarm came out of. So no bees will ultimately remain on the tree. They'll either make their way to the new location, which by the way is only 2 hives away, or they'll return to this hive, and they did by the thousands. So this colony is still well provisioned, has a lot of bees in it. What they don't have now is a laying queen yet. But their advantage is that they have several boxes of resources. The bees don't tear open capped honey before they depart. They really load up on open nectar cells and open honey cells that are yet to be cured. So this colony is in great shape. I won't be feeding them. We're just going to see how they do. They won't be showing any new brood until probably the end of the month. So we're looking at last week of September, first week of October, but what they will be doing through that time is their new queen will be able to use the resources that are there. They'll have lots of pollen, lots of nectar, and do you think they're going to sit around and not bring in new resources? You bet they will. So here we are the next morning. All is quiet. Everyone's moved in. The net has been removed. And there's the hive that they came out of. Everything's back to normal there. If you hadn't been here, you'd never know that you had a swarm. Of course, it's going to rain. And that's fine with me because they need the rain. Rain on warm days is not the end of the world, and they were even flying out under this light rain and going after nectar and resources. We look at the tree, the branch where they were collected from, no remnants. So they've either gone to the new hive or they've returned to the hive they originated from. Now the hive that the swarm came out of is the third one from the left, and the fifth one from the left is where we installed them. Do you think they'll all fly out and go back to their original hive? No, they'll stay right here. They'll stay with their queen. And you can see there are 3 boxes on the hive that they departed from, and those were not full, by the way. Now we're up to September 3rd. Let's check up on them and see how they're doing. Sure enough, the nectar flow is on, and the bees in their new hive are in high productive mode. These foragers are heading out and bringing in largely nectar right now. That's the first order of business. Nectar to draw comb out on those acorn frames, and of course, to fill the cells, to feed the bees. And then when the queen starts to lay, remember her eggs don't require anything other than a space to be. After the 3rd day, they'll have to feed them when they hatch out and become larvae. So that's it, they're doing great. The fact that we're coming into a nectar flow means that I really don't have to feed them. If I see productive levels like this, I'm just going to let them take care of themselves. Now if we get to the end of the month and they're not loaded up, they're not heavy, and they're producing lots of brood that they don't seem able to provide for, I may give emergency resources, but right now it doesn't look like they're going to need it. I'm also not going to replace the queen that's lost. I'm going to let them hatch out their own. There are a lot of drones in the area. There's a lot of reproduction capability there. She has to fly out and of course mate with drones that are not related as far as 9 miles away. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something today.